Warning: the podcast you are about to listen to discusses films on the basis of the craft of screenwriting. It contains spoilers. Films discussed may also contain offensive content.
In this episode, we'll be discussing Risen, released in 2016, and The Prince of Egypt, released in 1998.
Welcome to episode 12 of Jay and Dave Went to Film School podcast.
I guess our second holiday special. We had our Christmas special a little bit while ago, really early, and now we have our Easter special.
That's right. We're recording at Easter time, and so we've already one-upped Star Wars. They didn't have an Easter special.
We've also one-up ourselves because we recorded our Christmas special and released it. Oh wait, no, I guess not, because we are going to be releasing this Easter special like 3 months from Easter, I'm guessing.
Well, I think we've almost caught up to our backlog of recordings. I don't think we have as many in the queue now, so it'll probably be sooner.
Oh, actually, no, you're completely right. It won't be too late. It won't be the extremely late Easter special now.
Yeah, it'll be the moderately late Easter special. Still one-upped Star Wars.
But not VeggieTales.
But not VeggieTales. No, they've probably done a few Easter specials. How's it been going?
For me, it's going pretty all right. I'm going to be getting the results from a script writing competition that I applied for later next week. Just, I think, a few days after Easter Monday.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I have put my short film into a few festivals, so that will take a number of months before you find out if you've even made it in, or whether I have just donated those fees to support that festival. Either way, it's a cool opportunity.
It is a cool opportunity. And, I mean, if you really look at it, you are just supporting the culture of film. We're inspiring other people to pursue their passions.
Yeah, that's right.
All the while paying for a company to, host their venue. If only it was just a little bit cheaper to do so.
Yes. Each individual one is reasonable, but when you add up a few entries, it can get pricey.
Actually, are you budgeting at all? It's kind of like a really weird shift from talking about Easter, but do you have like a budget you're making for yourself when you're splitting between your film career and like personal life and just like regular things you have to buy?
I definitely budgeted when I made the film. I had kind of an ideal budget, and then I did some crowdfunding. I didn't make the budget I had planned, but I had made enough to cover the production costs, which was great. I hadn't planned or budgeted for like a specific amount for entering festivals. I'm just kind of playing that by ear with how I feel things are going economically for myself at the time to kind of determine how many I'll enter. And in life, if you're just asking about the life of Jason Platt and his budgeting techniques, I don't actually budget. I feel like I have been thoroughly trained for wise economic spending habits because I am a Mennonite, and Mennonites are known for being very thrifty, and I've learned to just by default make smart purchasing choices. I feel.
Oh, I guess that does make sense because aren't like the Amish also like a Mennonite denomination?
No, they're separate. They're related in the sense that they both sort of have a similar traditional Christian theology and live rurally, at least historically. The Mennonites have largely progressed into society, whereas the Amish have stayed back. There are still some Mennonite pockets that stay very secluded, but you'll find Mennonite churches in most urban centers, but we still have only a few generations back from very rural lifestyles, but we have kind of maintained a more modern presence.
It's good to know you guys are thrifty though.
Yeah,
because I was asking because I was kind of wondering if you guys did a thrift market kind of like the Amish.
No, nothing like that. Mostly the thriftiness plays out in when I go to the grocery store. It's very hard for me to buy anything unless it's marked down. I look for the sale,
fair enough.
the sale price on the tag, and those are my options for what I can eat that month.
I mean, I guess it is a little bit fun. It's like just going to almost like a blind box type situation.
Kind
going
of.
to the grocery store.
Yeah, you never know what you'll get to make on your menu.
I guess I'm the same way. I'm mostly thrifty just because of the way I was raised up. Like I didn't really I wasn't the kind of guy to ask for a lot of toys. If anything, I asked for a lot of games, but I had ways of getting those for free. But yeah, I guess now I don't budget as well just because I don't feel like I'm the kind of person to lose control. Unless it is food. I'm kind of a little bit the inverse. It's cool if a grocery store thing that I want is on sale, but if it's good, I might be tempted.
You're still gonna go with your brand name choice, full price.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit painful, and it's really dependent on how I'm feeling, and if there is the budget in it, because I do track whenever I do make a really big purchase, which is, again, mostly eating out, so I track how many times I do that. I mean, right now, probably should be doing that a little bit less. I guess after I graduated from school, I just had more time to go out and hang out with friends, and, the easiest activity is just going out to a place to eat, just a nice place to talk to people and catch up.
Yeah, there is a cost usually to social activity, often in the form of food. It's a worthwhile expense.
It is a worthwhile expense. I never really feel bad about it afterwards. It's only post-eating where I feel like, maybe next time we should just go to a park. Maybe we'll get a picnic or something. But it's honestly dependent on the weather, which is nice now.
Yes, we are in spring. Nicer weather. I'm sure in Calgary here there'll be a few more snowstorms that blow through, between now and
really?
June. That's Calgary for you, yes. The snow could be anytime, even up to May. You just never know.
That's crazy, because you're only one province over from us, and we're pretty.
I mean, we get the same kind of sunny weather any given time in spring, but it can turn into snow anytime as well, and then go back and forth. It's fun.
I mean, honestly, I guess, if a snowstorm happens during Easter, it'll make snow angels a little bit more, I don't know, acceptable. It's just your decorating.
True.
You don't even need to take down the Christmas tree, really, until your last snowstorm happens.
Yeah, it's really up to you. You get to enjoy the best of so many seasons for much more of the year than other places.
I should honestly come down to Calgary at some point to just see what it's all about. I've only been as far as Edmonton, and that's it.
Then you'll be able to test all of the stereotypes of Alberta. I was shocked when I came to Vancouver to film school and found out that there were stereotypes of Albertans.
The only stereotype I know is just, y'all are cowboys, and you only all work on oil rigs and the oil sands, and you're flat. That was it.
Yeah, kind of the oil tycoon Yosemite Sam, or the Canadian version of that.
Yeah, you're just a Canadian Texas, pretty much.
Which is partly true. There's a lot of oil and gas money here, but still, to find out that there are stereotypes of oneself or the place that you live. Of course, it's everywhere. Everyone sort of has a stereotype of everyone around them, but that was just funny. Just like the stereotype of BC is, the hippie.
I honestly think kind of true. It's more, to me, it's the California of the Canadian West Coast, where everyone is just wearing Lululemon sweatpants and going to yoga classes and drinking keto, which I think is a fun stereotype because I like California. The entire West Coast is just a really cool place for me to visit. Doesn't really feel too far from home whenever I go down to the States.
Have you had your Super Greens kale and wheat germ shake today already?
Yeah, I infused it into my veins while a kalimba player was doing a resounding melody as I was sitting on the top peak of Grouse Mountain.
Nice.
On a hike. So yeah, living the Vancouver lifestyle.
Just another day. You are very healthy. I don't eat so much of wheat germ, but I did watch the movie that you picked for today. How's that for a transition?
I was going to say, since it's springtime and it's the rebirth, Easter movies, really, really cool. But yeah, no, Prince of Egypt, an amazingly brilliant movie that I think transcends religion in a way. I think it can be watched by any single person of any denomination and even atheism. Because, yeah, I think it's just that good.
It was very popular when it came out, and of course it was done by Spielberg, right?
Partly, Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberger were one of the two founders of DreamWorks, which is made, who went on to make both Prince of Egypt and Shrek, which are two interestingly well-connected movies that came out of the same studio.
It was one of the first biblically themed, certainly animated movies done by a major studio. And so it was watched and enjoyed by the masses when it came out.
Which is kind of true. Apparently, it did flop a bit when it did come out, but they made their money back, surely. But I think Jeffrey Katzenberger and like the heads of DreamWorks thought it'd do a lot more better in the domestic market. But worldwide, it did amazing. I think over 200 million box office revenue.
Okay, so I didn't know that. I had assumed that since it was Spielberg, it did well domestically, and good thing you did your homework.
It's one of the fun facts I do know about this movie in particular. This movie was made at the same time as Shrek, which, surprisingly enough, this might become a surprise, did actually make more money than Prince of Egypt. A bigger box office success. I believe it brought in a lot more revenue, and I think if you've been on the internet, it's a little bit more culturally relevant today. One of the things that DreamWorks did, because they're kind of a little bit of a crummy company management-wise, I'm not going to lie, whenever a animator failed at their job at working on Prince of Egypt, like, I don't know, they didn't meet their deadlines or their art wasn't up to snuff, DreamWorks, like, punished them by sending them off to work on Shrek, which they seemed as, like, a garbage movie.
And it turned out to do better.
It turned out to do better, which is honestly, like, an amazing piece of, like, animation trivia, and I just think I like it because I like spiting DreamWorks in a way. But, yeah. It was called Getting Shrek'd.
Well, I watched this movie early on when it came out, and I loved it. So I'm glad you picked it, and this is one where one of the few where I have already seen the movie that David has selected, but I hadn't seen it in a long time, so I rewatched it and I enjoyed it thoroughly once again.
What do you think about it, as from an animation perspective, or I guess from a story perspective?
All of the above, I feel it does really well. It was, I would say, quite advanced for its time animation-wise. Like, they were blending in some CGI into the animation already, and so they were kind of using various tools, and they were very they wanted to make visually impressive set pieces throughout this movie. The scene of Moses in the basket, I believe the basket was CGI in some of the scenes of the basket, and then they made that really adventurous, like with different dangers of going through the water. They really upped the creativity there. Chariot race was another exciting set piece that they put on and just made it imaginative and exciting, like the chariot racing up the scaffolding of the Sphinx as it's being created, which, you know, is something you can only do in animation. They blended in really creative and fun things, like how the nose of the Sphinx gets broken off. And then they did other interesting animation methods, like with the hieroglyphic sequence on the wall, which I believe also was some or all CGI.
I think the way they did it was like a 3D wall, and the 2D elements were just placed on it.
But a really creative method for that sequence. And then they play out the story of the escape and also the Pharaoh's sacrifice of the Hebrew children, all on the hieroglyphics. Unless that part was later.
No, you are completely right. That was... It was partly then, and then also later on, where I think Moses or Ramsey was looking at the hieroglyphics themselves. I mean, talking about that, it's just a really, really cool, I guess, intro exposition scene to lay everything out, which is, I guess, a benefit of, like, really good screenwriting and also animation, because to tell that kind of setup exposition through moving hieroglyphics, and then leading that into an amazing intro song, Deliver Us, it's the opening song, sung by the mother of Moses, right? And not only is it just an amazingly resonant song, sets up the character of like Moses as a baby. Coolly enough, the voice actress who voiced the mother, her name is Afra Haza. She actually voiced her in 17 of the 20 languages that this film was dubbed in.
Really?
Yeah, it's a
Wow.
really interesting thing. She's like the only other person I've known who's did this with like animation is Phil Collins, who did Tarzan. He also sang his songs in multiple languages. But yeah, no, Afra Haza, who is only fluent in like a couple of these, had to just learn how to sing her songs and do her lines
Wow.
phonetically in these other different languages.
That's impressive.
She was like a really serious actor. She really liked the movie. I believe even when she was recording the song, she was holding a baby doll just to really get herself
yeah.
into character. Just these little elements of like animation and the behind the scenes that you don't really get to see too much about.
And they were just creative in interpreting how the elements of the story could get represented. So, for instance, the final plague, the plague of the firstborn, it was just a really cool, like the Spirit of God coming down in this white wisps of smoke at night and sort of flowing through the streets and going into the houses that didn't have the blood on the door frames, which is the Easter tie-in with it being representative, the Passover being representative of Easter. And then I also liked the way that they took some narrative liberties with tying things together. So, for instance, the Midianite slave that they bring into Moses and Ramses when they're young is Zipporah, who eventually Moses meets in the desert and gets married. That part's in the Bible, not the part where she's brought into them early, where he already knows her. But from a narrative screenwriting standpoint, it is a tool to elevate when he does come to meet her later. They already know each other, and he's already had a chance kind of to build in some drama. Like, he's already at that point both kind of insulted her, or in a sense shamed her by that dominance of being the leader, and she's been captured as a slave, and then also honored her by letting her go. So that's already some built-in drama that the screenwriter chose to put in there. So that when they meet later on, there's already that history between them, which I thought was an effective screenwriting choice.
This is still technically an adaptation, not a full retelling of the stories of the Old Testament.
But it is very close. It is actually very, very close.
It is very close. Yeah. Another fun fact about this movie, they had to consult, well, actually, they didn't, it wasn't a had to, they wanted to consult multiple religious experts when making this movie. And according to Wikipedia, they consulted nearly 600 of them.
Wow.
I guess they, during like an initial screening for those experts, they all just kind of agreed that this was just a really, really good way of telling the stories of the Bible. So it's accurate. You are completely right. But going on those really cool animation scenes. This is my favorite, I guess, religious and also Christian movie of all time. Just because animation, I think, is the best way of showing, I guess, the powers of God without using CGI, which I still think is a little inferior to 2D, because you can't get those scenes like the tongue of fire and like the burning bush. Of course, the parting of the Red Sea, which is the ending scene of this movie.
Another great sequence, yeah.
You'll watch that scene and you'll see, when I like read about it in the Bible, I thought it was just like the Red Sea was like maybe the depth of a swimming pool, and so like their heads were still like above the water. But no, it's when you see it, it's just a gigantic wall of water that when they're walking through, like through this middle, you're still seeing like the silhouettes of sea animals.
Yeah,
illuminated by lightning.
They did that really well, just to show the miraculous nature of a splitting of a sea. Made it seem very realistic, like with how uneven the ground is under there.
That scene in particular, that Red Sea scene, 10 animators worked on that guy for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Just to make that 5-minute sequence. It's honestly, it is a labor of love to make an animation like that. Because, yeah, it's multiple years of work on even small scenes throughout the whole length of a runtime.
Well, it certainly comes off as epic. They succeeded at their goal.
I will have to ask, yeah, because it is just another way that they are telling the story creatively. This movie notably features multiple musical numbers, Deliver Us being one of them. But then we also have The Seven Plagues, which is an absolutely banger song, even though it is a song about destruction and death and fear. But it's just a really good song. Also, the priest song, the Egyptian priests, playing with the big boys,
Right.
which is notably sung by Martin Short and Steve Martin.
That's right. I had forgotten that that's who they were. They pulled out all the stops with the voice actors on this one. And we haven't even got to the voice of God. They went with the choice of Val Kilmer, rest in peace.
That's another reason why we wanted to pick this movie to watch, because he did recently die.
What would be your, since we're talking about him, what would be your favorite Val Kilmer film, other than this one, if it's this one?
So funnily enough, right, I think the Batman movies is one that he's probably the most famous for. But I don't think I've actually watched any of the Batman films that Val Kilmer stars in.
You should watch them. I enjoyed his Batman. It was the one where the villain was the Riddler, which of course was played by Jim Carrey.
That's why I want to watch it, because Jim Carrey's just that much fun of an actor, and
yeah, you need to watch it.
this would be one of the Batman villains that have been portrayed in live action, the Riddler, multiple times. We have Batman Forever and I guess The Batman, and incredibly two different takes on the Riddler character. But yeah, I definitely need to go watch this one. But if you had to ask me, I still kind of like Val Kilmer's performance as Goose in the Top Gun movies.
That that's
the original.
That's kind of what made him.
I guess so.
Which he kind of nailed that personality of someone who's on your team but is really just a jerk.
No, I got you. I mean, he kept Tom Cruise in check. That was Goose's whole kind of thing. Tom Cruise was a hotshot. Goose wanted to keep his job. Going back to Prince of Egypt real quickly. Val Kilmer is technically not the only person who voices God in that movie.
Oh.
Every single major character's voice actor actually voices God, but they do it in like a whispered tone behind Val Kilmer.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
if you really listen into it, Val Kilmer's voice is the one that you notably hear. But then if you really listen in, you'll hear whispers, especially when the fire happens. You'll hear a lot of the other voices.
Okay. They wanted to give kind of a wispy effect to it.
I guess it was that, and it's like something about like God speaking through all of us. That's why everybody's voice was heard. But yeah, no, it was a really cool detail. Again, it's just another creative form of storytelling that they just added in here, on top of everything else.
My favorite Val Kilmer movie is Red Planet. Did you ever see that one?
No, definitely not. I'm assuming it has something to do with Mars.
Yeah, it's a Voyage to Mars movie.
Oh, another sci-fi. That definitely makes more sense for you.
Yep. So maybe we'll have to do that one at some point.
For the upcoming sci-fi episode that we definitely need to be putting on at some point soon.
Yep.
Yeah, because like I only know Val Kilmer from 2 roles. I honestly should be watching more of him, given that he's not starring in anything else recently now.
Yeah, no, other than the sequel to Top Gun, I don't know what he was in recently. He did have a cameo in the sequel when he already had the cancer affect his voice so much he couldn't speak, or he couldn't use his regular voice. He had to...
Yeah, he had to use like a voice box, I believe.
Yeah, like one of those enhancers.
Yeah, which I guess they rewrote the script a little bit just to accommodate Val Kilmer.
Yep.
Which is nice of them.
Yep.
Actually, I did quickly look it up, just as IMDb. Apparently, in the movie Planes by Pixar, he has a cameo as a fighter jet, which is kind of funny. Maybe together, maybe not even for the podcast, we can watch Red Planet, or for the podcast if you really want to talk about it.
It's worth seeing. Guess we'll have to see what makes it in.
But yeah, overall, did you like the musical numbers and just the inclusion of, I guess, having them?
Yes, I did. I would say it maybe wasn't quite as solid as say the Disney music and songwriting. It was still great. There was high points, but you can tell that the songwriting wasn't quite at the Disney standard, but just by a little. What do you think?
I got you. I feel like there are probably a lot of people who would disagree with that, but I can't see where that does come from. I guess it's just because the musical numbers in this are limited. There's only a couple of tracks where they actually have lyrics, but I think they do come at very poignant points of the story, without overshadowing a couple of the more serious points. Like, apart from the 7 plagues, I don't think there's a song for whenever God's on screen or when they're having like conversations with each other. I think they were just used to make already epic moments more epic, whereas Disney uses songs to tell how characters are feeling sometimes.
That's true.
Which makes them a little bit more poignant. I can see where that comes from.
Yeah, I would maybe say that the dramatic effect of these songs were better than Disney, but that maybe just the song, the melodies of some. I'm only going to say some. Maybe the writing wasn't quite at the Disney level, but they were kind of fulfilling different functions, as you're saying.
If you really do want to look into it, for both you and our podcast listeners, there is now a Broadway stage adaptation of this movie where they do add in more, I guess, songs that do kind of fit that Disney style of saying what a character is feeling or emphasizing a moment, as well as keeping the original epic songs like Deliver Us and 7 Plagues.
Oh, okay.
I haven't personally watched it, but from the clips I've seen, it does seem like a pretty epic stage adaptation as well.
That would be amazing. But yeah, I give this one 5 out of 5. It's a favorite.
It is also a 5 out of 5 for me as well. I think it's like my number 24 top animated movie of all time.
Okay.
And then moving on to your recommendation for me, which is Risen, an incredibly inventive way of telling the events, I guess, during and mostly post Passion of the Christ.
Yes, exactly.
Told through the eyes of a Roman legionary, I believe, a Roman tribune. So essentially telling the story of those events from the perspective of the antagonists, if we're going to analyze it like that, which is a really cool way of doing it.
Yeah, I've got to give credit to the writer, who is Kevin Reynolds and Paul Aiello. Kevin Reynolds also directed this because it is an angle of the story that, of course, this character of the Tribune is an imagined character, but there would have been the presence of several of Roman guards that took in the events of the crucifixion and the subsequent happenings of this historical event. And so then you're brought into it. And I mean, I've read this story dozens and dozens of times in the Bible. It's got value just in that, in the actual text. But it is something that happened, and therefore there's all sorts of additional elements and parts of the story that we don't know, and that the writer did a good job of bringing us into looking at it from new eyes, being the Roman contingent. And so really good choices by the writer. What else stood out to you about it?
Talking about just the character of Clavius, I'm not as, I guess, a religious literate or scholar as I guess you might be, but correct me if I'm wrong, I guess the only two major like Roman characters in the Bible are Pontius Pilate, who does convict Jesus, and I guess Julius Caesar in a way. Maybe, I can't remember if the guards who did guard Jesus were named.
Yeah, no, they weren't. It was basically Pilate is the one who does have a presence in the biblical text. And I believe he's even mentioned in the secular Roman history. If you read Tacitus, which mentions Jesus' death was at the hands of Pilate. So it's a very well-documented historical event, which not a lot of people know that it's in the secular Roman history.
That's actually really cool, because I was going to ask if the stories of Jesus do appear in just outside Roman history, so that's cool.
Clavius is a created character, and the guards, there were guards in the original text, but they weren't named. They experienced, I don't want to get mixed up, so I'm not going to go into detail about what is said because I don't want to say something that's not true.
Yeah, because, like, yeah, I was honestly kind of surprised that Clavius was completely made up and not inspired by, like, bits and pieces of actual history or religious text.
Well, I
Because-
guess that's a testament to the skill of the writer then, I guess.
I guess, because, like, when I really think about it, if I really put myself into that time period and I put myself in the shoes of the Romans, if I was a full non-believer and I was, like, suspicious of Jesus, my first instinct would be, like, he was stolen in the night. He didn't rise up. He's been, taken by the disciples to proclaim, like, a false prophet and sow disorder, and really his body's buried somewhere hidden away. So, like, my first instinct would be to go out and look for him. And yeah, that's why I'm kind of surprised it doesn't really appear too much in, like, actual, like, historical findings, or that it wasn't documented the Roman reaction to the whole, I guess, resurrection of Jesus.
So it is documented that was the cover story, that the disciples stole the body was the Jewish leaders needed to have an explanation. And
oh, so that is true.
That part is true. Yeah, that's right in the scripture, because of course they were very threatened. That's the whole reason why they wanted Jesus to be crucified. And then they were also threatened by the fact that there was no body. So they did need a cover story. It's possible that Clavius was inspired by one mention of a soldier at the crucifixion who, after seeing Jesus get crucified and say his last words, and also experience, I believe, the earthquake and the darkening of the sky. So they show all those things in the film, if you remember.
Yep.
How the sky is too dark and there was this earthquake, all happening during the crucifixion. There is one Roman guard who says, after seeing all of that and the way that Jesus died, which he actually died relatively soon when it comes to crucifixion victims, because usually
a matter of hours, right?
Yeah,
days.
Yeah, which is part of the prophecy that is actually spoken of about the Messiah, which is that none of his bones will be broken, and they always, to speed up the dying of crucifixion victims, they break the legs, but they didn't break Jesus' legs because he was already dead, which I think speaks to God being pleased with his son's sacrifice, and it went sooner, it went faster than a regular victim. And anyway, that also ties in with the prophecy. But anyway, all this to say, when there was one guard who saw all of this, and in the Bible it says, he said, "Surely this man is the Son of God." And so it was something that spectators and even the Roman participants were taking in, they were observing, and it was impacting them. And so it's possible that this character was the inspired by that, because of course in the story, or in the movie, they bring him to eventually find the disciples. When he finds them, Jesus is with them and he recognizes him, and then all of a sudden he's faced with this new reality.
And actually, I didn't want to talk about that character journey for a little bit. We do meet Clavius at a really, really cool scene, which is an incredibly big battle between him, his legionaries, and I guess the forces of Barabbas, I believe, which is a really cool name drop to, like, establish how they actually caught that guy.
Mm-hmm. You know the history of Barabbas.
Yeah, he was I believe he was a rebel leader. I think it was some kind of like.
So yeah, he was a known murderer. I don't know. I can't recall now how much they go into him being like an insurrectionist. He may have been. I'm trying to recall that. But he was the one who was released by Pilate after Jesus was arrested and kind of given an unfair trial, and Pilate saw that he was being kind of railroaded by the Jewish leaders. And then he gives the crowd, they had this tradition of releasing one criminal on a certain date, I believe, in the year. Any criminal at all, like no matter what he did. And so in wanting to release Jesus, but still trying to not make it apart from the wishes of the Jews. He gives them the option: do you want me to release Jesus or Barabbas, who was a murderer? It says, because the Jewish leaders were coercing the crowd, they get them to select Barabbas. And so Barabbas goes free even though he's guilty, and then that's also sort of a liberty that the writer takes, brings us into this scene post all of this happening, where Barabbas goes back to being a murderer, kind of, or an insurrectionist, and then gets caught and dispatched.
I thought that was before Jesus' persecution, because
No, so that's what makes this interesting. The time period that they chose to tell this story is it's post arrest. Actually, it is. We don't know exactly when that scene's happening, if Jesus has already been crucified, but he's definitely been arrested and convicted and sentenced to die.
Because if that's the case, that is an incredibly fast reconviction rate for Barabbas.
Yes.
Like how do you get dealt that hand and then just fumble that so badly? Like, that's crazy. Because going back to Clavius, we do start off with him being an incredibly effective Roman general. He is a good tactician. He employed the pseudo formation in defeating Barabbas, which is cool. And then we see him kind of be like almost a Sherlock Holmes-ish character, when we do have like this he is given this question like, how did Jesus, like, how is he gone, what happened, what are we gonna do? And he kind of goes through an incredibly like logical way of going about finding Jesus through his investigations and his efforts. But kind of like after post midpoint, where he does encounter Jesus and see that he's alive, he goes through that incredibly quick conversion, which I'm not against. I like that he is like quite fast, because that's kind of what happened when the disciples did see Jesus alive again. The only like gripe I kind of have about it is he does kind of stop having those really like logical tactician elements to him during like one of the big last fight scenes, I suppose, where the disciples are running away from what's his name, Lucius, the aide that got promoted, as well as his legionaries. The most he does is inform them of the roles of like the Romans and the fact they're tracking them. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to see him be a little bit more clever. I don't know.
I guess they probably were going for, this was such a paradigm shift for him, kind of a life foundation altering change, that he was he was reborn, kind of thing, with a new allegiance. And it's not that takes away your skills. So you're right in that he could still show off his skills, but at that point, it was just he was a different person and not quite himself anymore.
Because I was even watching that scene where the disciples are all on the boat and they're going fishing, and they are getting the biggest catch in human history. I kind of just wanted to see Clavius like jump in there and like lend his Roman strength and pulling up the net, but no, he's just hanging onto the rigging watching all this happen. So yeah. I don't know, just even a little bit of like
no,
either
that's
his
true.
skepticism or his actual fighting capabilities when it came to defending people when he does ally himself with the disciples. I guess there's that one really kind of small but kind of cool scene where he does disarm Lucius without killing him and still gives him back his sword.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, besides that, he almost felt kind of passive once Jesus showed up.
And I mean, that's also part of our orientation to Jesus when we come into following him from the heart, is we submit to him. He's the guy in charge, and he is the wisest and most loving and best leader. And so there's maybe some of that going on, but I think you're right. From a screenwriting perspective, you need to be consistent with your character in showing his response to all of these things and letting that journey be complete. Interesting how that's played out, because it's an interesting dynamic that the writer has to navigate with this one.
It's that, and partly because I'm kind of viewing this movie as a little bit of an action movie, because there's a surprising amount of like actually kind of cool like fight and also chase scenes in this movie, which does elevate its entertaining factor from like a normal like Christian retelling to a little bit more of a spectacle, kind of like Prince of Egypt did it. If you combine those Roman elements of him and as well as the new teachings he's got from Jesus, and you found that synergy, I remember that being one of the things I learned from VFS, to take the journey he went on, as well as the original character, and finding that cool midpoint where they do become like an incredibly new, fleshed out character by the end.
So I've got a favorite scene from this one, but I want to hear if you have a favorite scene.
I actually really, really liked the actual way they did the crucifixion. I think it was a really cool, like, because I've seen like the larger like Passion of Christ movies where like the ending scene is kind of when Jesus gets crucified, but we begin at the beginning. So we kind of have those moments where you have those flashes of the vision of Jesus' face, the kind of other things of like the two criminals on the side. And I think it was just a really cool way of going about it. I mean, it was that, and also the ending scene with Jesus where he does disappear in a great ball of fire, and you kind of have like almost like, I actually thought it was more like a nuclear bomb, because I think you can almost compare that scene to Oppenheimer.
Yeah, walking into the sun, giant flaming ball, and then they have the the blowback, which was definitely a narrative license in that one, because in the scripture it just says he's lifted up into the air. But
no, he went out with a bang, essentially.
Yeah.
He went full Michael Jackson with that exit. I suppose also I kind of did like the fishing scene. I always kind of like that scene in the Bible anyways, where we do go from catching a whole bunch of fishes to then seeing Jesus walking on water. I mean, overall, to be fair, this is an incredibly well-shot movie, cinematographically.
Yeah.
What's that word?
I don't know. You're trying to change it into an adjective, and I don't know if it actually has been. You might be creating a new word.
Cinematography.
Cinematographically? I don't know.
Well, it was well shot. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and great actors too. I really think they did a bang up job with casting this one.
It was Tom Felton. That I knew that one. That was from Draco Malfoy, Harry Potter, and Ralph Fiennes, I believe. That's Clavius, right?
Joseph Fiennes.
Joseph Fiennes.
I'm assuming that's the brother of Ralph. I don't actually know.
I think he also starred in Conclave, didn't he? Which is the other kind of like
big
film that came out.
Ralph Fiennes has been in a lot. He's very well known.
No, you are right. It is Joseph Fiennes. Who is that? All right.
Oh, I knew it was Joseph Fiennes, but it's just whether it's Ralph Fiennes' brother is what I'm trying to find out.
Oh yeah, no, you're totally right. It is Joseph and Ralph Fiennes are brothers and actors. That makes more sense. They are very, very talented people, and they look the same.
Yep, definitely can tell the family resemblance. My favorite scene is the scene where Clavius meets up with the second guard in the tavern, the guard at the tomb, and he's doing his Sherlock Holmes best to figure out what happened. And that performance by that second guard is just a great scene. He's someone who's just experienced something that doesn't fit inside his world, inside his box, and he's trying to make sense of it. And then, of course, the Jewish leaders come and coerce him to tell a certain story, and Clavius comes to find out the real story, and he just plays like that scene. He's so emotional, and it's just a great delivery.
I kind of have to agree with you. I actually really, really love interrogation scenes in like detective and action movies. From a writing standpoint, it's fairly simple. It's just mostly just delivery exposition, but it really comes in through the power of your actor to deliver those scenes really powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I actually, there's only very, very few like religious films I've watched in my life, because there's only a couple that are kind of worth your time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually genuinely have to rank this one just below Prince of Egypt.
I'm the same way. Like I have watched a number of Christian produced films, and their quality is generally very low. But this one is, they actually managed to do a Hollywood level production.
I think the best kinds of religious films are the ones that you can watch without being Christian, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They either have to tell the themes of religion quite well, or they just tell like almost the historical or just like the account of the story in a fair like adapted way, without having to force down the teachings and theologies of it onto the audience.
Yeah,
which
tell
I
a
think
good
is
story
unfair for people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
tell a good story. Have it, be accurate to the material. Relate what happened with good character development. Let the story bring what God wants it to bring by doing a good job at telling a good story.
Ideally, as filmmakers, we should be catching as wide of a net to catch as many different audience members and bring them in to watch a really, really cool story, just like the disciples did. Trying to do a cool tie-in there with the fish. But yeah.
Well, and that's what I think storytellers try to do is their stories are a net that are trying to capture people, whether it's with a meaning of a story or a lesson, or just using good art to immerse and be a testament to good art with that story.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah. It's just a good way of spreading a word, and hopefully it'll be a good word.
Well said.
Yeah. Overall, for The Risen, I'd actually have to give it like a good solid 3.8 for me.
Nice.
I kind of want a little more character development, but from a cinematography, graphical, whatever word, a brilliant film to watch, and surprisingly entertaining as well.
Yeah, and because I'm so close to the Christian material and the story, I give this one a 4.5 because they did so well with something that's so close to my heart. So I'm kind of giving it a bit of a hometown score, but it's up there.
Thanks again for listening to another epic episode of Jay and Dave with the Film Podcast. I guess you can catch us more on YouTube and Spotify. I feel like we should probably be adding that tag in now, since we have a couple places to watch us now.
Yes, thanks for coming along on this journey once again. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Let us know what you think, and this will be Jay and Dave signing off.
And that's a wrap. Special thanks to Niranj, who made the intro and outro music for this podcast. You can find him on Instagram at his handle @NiranjD. That is @NIRANJD on Instagram.